Hey all guys, RProg here, and welcome to another C++ tutorial. And in this tutorial we're going to be talking about loops. And if we have enough time, we'll tackle functions. But I'm going to doubt it because that's going to be a slightly long one. But I may touch base on it. Let's put it that way. So let's go ahead and jump in real quick to loops. So the first one we'll tackle is a while loop. A while loop looks pretty simple. First we need a variable. There we are. We have a variable named C for reasons I'll expand on in just a second. And then we're going to use the while keyword to start our while loop. Now within these brackets here, it's going to be what's known as a condition statement. And in this condition, I'm going to change this to 1. There we are. And I'm going to say while C is less than 11. So essentially, I'm going to output 1 through 10. So let's start our output statement. Let's output C. And then, must not forget, along with our condition, we also need our execution statement to change the variable so we can change our condition to eventually exit the loop. Otherwise, our program will run continuously forever and ever and always until your computer crashes or the internet melts, whatever. So let's introduce us an operator here, and it's called the incrementation operator. There's also the decrementation operator. So incrementation operator looks like that. Decrementation looks like that. They can be written like this or like that. In this situation, until we cross paths with objects and things of that nature, I'm going to boldly jump out and say they essentially do the same thing for now, but there are differences. They do different things, but essentially they both either add 1 or subtract 1. In our case, as of right now, C++, and this is why I use the variable C, is to expand on why C++ is called C++. It's because it's built on the C language. Regardless, this is essentially the same as saying C is assigned C plus 1. So it's much easier, instead of saying C is assigned C plus 1, to say C++. Sabi? Okay. As much as I hate that word. Now, that essentially covers the while loop, and what we can cover now is known as the do-while loop. Now, the difference between a while loop and a do-while loop is a very simple difference. The do-while loop is going to execute at least once, while the while loop will only execute if this is true. It will execute until it's false, essentially. That's why we have to have this execution statement to eventually make this not less than 11. So whenever it's not less than 11, it'll break out of the body of the loop. For example, if we assign that to 12, we go ahead and build and run this, we have no output because it was false. Even if we have this as 11, nothing. As you can see, it must be true. It must be less than 11 for it to output something. See, it satisfies the condition, so it's going to run the output. That's the body of the loop. So now that we got that out of the way, we can now cross paths with do-while loop. A do-while loop will execute no matter what, at least once. So we'll use the do keyword. And then after that, we have the while keyword, semicolon. Expected expression, goober head, that would be a C. Okay. So essentially, we can do the same thing. Voila. I know, I sound so excited, but did I forget to do something? You see how we get us a bunch of 1s, and it's continuing, by the way. Just a bunch of 1s. Well, guys, you remember what I just said a minute ago? where I said we must have an execution statement. That's what I was talking about. We didn't have our execution statement. And voila. Since we had our execution statement, we was able to increment this variable, and as the loop progressed, as this stayed true, it continued to execute until eventually this is false. And when it's false, it breaks out, hits the return statement, which essentially ends the program because this is the main function. Now, we have one more loop to tackle, and we'll touch base lightly on functions. Lightly. So, and this is going to be the for loop. Now, there's different ways you can do the for loop. You can still keep a variable on the outside. Say, for example, you're wanting to use this in another loop. This C variable, that is. Then we can use that there. Leave the first part blank. And there's 3 parts to a for loop, by the way, and you're fixing to see it. There we are. That's it. So essentially, if you're wanting to use something that's affected by the body of a for loop, you want to declare that variable on the outside and then use the last 2 sections of the for loop to basically manipulate that variable. Otherwise, if it's just within this for loop and there's nothing that's going on outside that for loop, there's no variable that's going to be that needs to be affected outside the for loop, I should say, then to simply use this first part and declare it right here instead. This isolates that variable, or actually puts in what's known as scope. It puts it within the scope of the for loop only. And this is the scope of main. And anything outside the scope of main is considered global scope, which anything can access it. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there. It'll actually be a fairly quick tutorial. But we do have to cover loops, so that's why I decided to get with loops. So let's touch base on functions real quick and see what these guys look like. So functions essentially need a return type. In this case, we'll just say void. Void means we're returning nothing. And we need a function name. Possible parameters, in this case nothing. And a body. And in this one, we're just going to output I'm a function. Give me the ability to type. There we go. And then, since we don't return anything, we can simply declare it within main. And it just executes the output statement. Now, that's all well and good, but we can see we're using a function here, and it has a return type, right? It returns an integer. It returns to essentially the operating system. So, we can make one of those too. We can't make a main function, so to speak, but we can make a function that returns something. So, in this case, let's return an integer. We'll call it the same name. We can get away with this. We're going to pass 2 parameters. And what we're going to use is the return statement. We're going to return the sum of A and B. Because we're working with integers, they're numbers, we can add them together. Now, the reason why we can get away with using the same name is due to something called a signature. The signatures of these 2 functions are totally different. For one, it returns a type. And it also takes parameters, where this one does not take parameters. And that's the biggest difference. This takes parameters, this does not. And the type of parameters makes the difference as well. If I was to change this to a double or a float, whatever, a character, anything like that, that changes the signature of the function. For example, I don't And I've been wrong before, but I do believe we cannot get away with doing this. You see what I mean? It's because the return type does not affect the signature of the function, therefore it can't tell the difference between these two functions. So that's a no-no. You'll need to have something in the parameters that changes the signature to be able to use the same function name. Now, since it returns something, this is the neat aspect of functions that return things. We can use this in an output statement. Let's just say the all popular 2 plus 2. And we should get the sum of 2 plus 2. What a surprise. Okay. One last thing I'll introduce that deals with functions. And this is why functions is going to get a little long, because we're going to get into something called templates. Templates are fun. I promise, guys. They're headache inducing, but they can be fun too. And they can be even more fun once you figure them out. So, let's introduce the string library. Good Lord, I cannot type today. Here we are. I'm going to go ahead and access the standard namespace. Pull the string object, or essentially declare it by name. So I can do this without having to use the standard library over and over and over in my program. We'll tackle namespaces later on. So I'm going to say string, same, and there's that warning again. So yeah, once again, keep that in mind. You have to have at least parameters that are different. Or, yeah, parameters. Excuse me. You can have the same name. Keep that in mind. That doesn't matter, because these two have different scopes. But the neat thing about strings is you can do the same thing essentially to a string that you can with numbers. Essentially. They're two totally different things, but you can do the same thing to them. We can return the sum of string A and string B. What does that look like? Yeah, that's good enough. I would have thought about getting creative, but nah, save that for later. Build and run it. And as you can see, it's what's known as concatenation. It concatenated these two strings and added them together. Well, concatenation is adding together, so yeah. That's essentially what the additional operator does to a string. It concatenates. But I invite you to check out c++.com to read up more about the string library. And I'll have the link in the description below. So, but just for visual aid purposes, there's the website I invite you to read up on the string library and other libraries, and it even has its own tutorial section within c++.com. It talks about hexadecimal. It talks about how we have a positional-based numeric system and how it works with the basically the backbone of C++ and C as a programming language, and essentially a lot of other languages as well. So I invite you to look up all that information, because there's things I'm not going to talk about, such as the range-based for loop and things of that nature, because I'm going to be more focused on the bare bone basics, and I'm going to let you do your own pedaling, so to speak. I'm going to let you pilot your own bicycle and do some work on your end. And of course, I invite you to write your own little snowflake programs. I mean, you have to do this on your own time. I can't just sit here and talk till I'm blue in the face and show you all this stuff and you not do it and learn anything. This is a very action-oriented skill. So, once again, I'll have that I'll have c++.com in the description below. That way that you'll know to check that out and things of that nature. But that's it, guys. That was loops and functions, and I'll try to get a video out this weekend. It depends on my work schedule and my workflow. If not, and it'll probably be around the same time next week. Of course, I don't have a set schedule. It's just I upload these when I can. So with that, guys, if I made any mistakes, please let me know in the comments below. I welcome criticism. You're not going to hurt my feelings. If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and happy coding. Thank you.